All right, so it's a pretty tall task to talk to such a large topic as addressing agility and infrastructure, and so I'm going to do my best to walk through at least some of the approaches, philosophies, ideas that we've taken at Syracuse that really have helped us develop a paradigm which I think works pretty well, at least for us. But first, let me offer some initial thoughts before we jump into this. So. Agility in my mind as I think about this is not a single action. It's really not something you just go to the store and buy more of. I need more agility. Let me go and find something that at the local Walmart that'll help me with that. It's really an integrated approach or philosophy. It's something that you have to develop over time and institute into lots of layers of the infrastructure. And so it's not just buying the right thing or having the right technology choices or even instituting the right policies. It's really a combination of things. Agility is created before the need for it is apparent. And so even before you get to the point where you suddenly realize there's something unexpected, you need to have the underpinnings to be able to pivot, to address and to meet the needs that you even a few months ago, a few days ago, a few hours ago didn't know that existed. This talk is really about ideas. I'm gonna have some technology sprinkled in here and there, but it's really about ideas in the sense of things that you probably have already heard or identified or even utilized. But I'm hoping that you'll find a couple new thoughts or new things you might connect to that will help you as you think about how to create an agile infrastructure. And of course, that's all framed under the caveat that resources, time, circumstances, they're significant variables. I know each one of our institutions is different, each one of our areas is different, and so we're going to have different constraints on perhaps dollars or staffing or culture of our institutions that absolutely play into what we can accomplish when we think about agility. And agility is the ability to meet or to turn or pivot quickly to react to something that might be coming at you that you hadn't expected or might shift over time and really be impactful that you need to address. And so with that, let's jump into some 101s. So these are some things that we've looked at and learned from as we've done this for a couple decades, as many of you have. First, models and frameworks. No one's button clicking anymore. This is really about terraforming or meta level management. Meta meaning you're managing services upon services. So multiple services put together are managed as an entity. And terraforming where you're taking thousands of desktops, laptops, or thousands of servers, and you're treating them as an entity that you're managing as a model or as a framework. And so the first thing we are moving away from is thinking about how do I manage individual desktops more? How do I treat all of our desktops or laptops, all of our servers or research farm as an entity that I can apply something to? And coding is documentation, scripting, whatever it might be, all are components of that. We're careful when investing in niche technologies or niche solutions, and this can include the cloud when you think about hardware. Trying to look for things that will tackle multiple challenges or multiple questions that we may have or multiple issues that we might want to address, as opposed to identifying a very pinpoint solution, but something that can only be used in that way. That sort of the best of breed versus monolith argument. You can go with the best of breed, but it may limit the number of options you might have in terms of agility. We're certainly looking for infrastructure that can be cost effective, performant, and highly reliable available. So this is the iron triangle of fast, cheap, and right. And trying to break that challenge down. This is the fast, cheap, and right, pick any two. And so oftentimes when we're looking at infrastructure purchases or choices, we either felt like it was going to take too long to implement, it was going to be too expensive, or if we rushed it, that it wasn't going to be right. So trying to find something that was a nice balance of those three was definitely helped in creating agility for our systems. And then abstraction, and this is a relatively common one over the last decade or so, moving hardware or cloud systems away from the end user, those systems and services they might sit on. So we're 99% plus virtualized, even in our research computing realm, and remove all of the connection that the user might feel from their perspective to the back end hardware, which means we can slide all sorts of intermediate layers around that allows us to move or shift resources to the most important point of something we might want to address and be agile with. So I think as the first example of that, this is common knowledge to everyone, COVID-19 came in like a freight train for most of our institutions and sent most of our workforce home. And so one of the first questions that we received was, well, what's the implication? How are we going to move for us somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 people off campus and into their houses? And so we were fortunate to have a lot of the underpinnings, again, agility built on preparation, to be able to meta manage and move whole classes of people off. And so we had already developed something called device tunnel, which is a machine level VPN. We could quickly, by group ads, just turn desktops into remote access stations. They could literally pick them up, which they often did, and take them with them home, including office furniture and a few other things in their office to make their home life a little more comfy. They were able to transport their office work to their home life without any significant impact. In fact, for the most part, there was zero training required because the machines that they had operated just as if they were on campus. And so that is certainly one large aspect that I suspect many of you felt. The other part of that was in terms of the agile infrastructure, we also quickly got questions, well, what about for everyone else, for students or for faculty staff that don't have desktops? How are we going to meet the need for things that they might need to access on campus that are either security restricted or specific to a campus license? And so we pivoted on some of our DR research hardware to deploy remote desktop services or Windows virtual desktop. And so this, again, leveraged abstraction, which is virtualization in our case, and allowed us, again, to disconnect the user experience and move those resources from what might be one service or system that was now less important to one that was clearly more important, which is turning on the ability for our remote folks to be able to connect in. One other comment that's sort of unique to Syracuse, our research and enterprise computing are run by the same group, and so that allows us to pivot between those two environments. And so the information flow, which includes not only hardware, but also research and development or ideas, or in this case, the ability to take what was intended for research and be able to turn it quickly over into the operations was significant benefit. But my overall comment in this is all of this was without an additional investment. We didn't ask for dollars because there weren't very many dollars net available at the time. To tackle this. This was all done with existing work that we had prepared ahead of time through frameworks and through creating the ability to abstract away the user experience from the hardware connected to it and shift things around behind the scenes. The second sort of example is one that's maybe a little more specific to the storage realm. I don't know about the rest of you, but we have been looking for an affordable, reliable, fast storage platform, fast, cheap, and right, for a couple decades now. And the NetApp folks can close their ears for a second. They seem to have done a reasonable job. Now, when I buy my next one, I'm going to whine profusely about how expensive it is, and how it doesn't meet my needs and a bunch of other things. But for the most part, I think they've done a good job of mixing in the three things that really need to. And we all know that you can spend money on all flash. That there's a clear answer. If you have loads of money that you want to spend on storage, which they're happy to take, you can put all of your workloads on flash. But we're about a 10 petabyte shop and growing. You'll see a little more information on that a little bit later on. At 10 petabytes, of which probably only about 500 terabytes is active at any one time, active warm data. It doesn't make a lot of sense to invest in 9.5 petabytes of flash, right? And so we could also go to the spinning disk, which is where we get a load of capacity at a low cost, but it doesn't really support the higher IO workloads. And in our environment, we're a large cloud, again, highly virtualized. We operate ourselves very much in a cloud-like fashion, infrastructure as a service-wise. We're not always able to predict who is going to need performance and who is not. And so spinning disks present IO challenges while they do pretty well in capacity. And then, of course, we could move to lower tier platforms, but at what risk? And we have done this a little bit in our research realm. One of the reasons we are pushing to move to the NetApp tier for research is because we've had some bumps in the road and the tiers lower than 1, let's just say, that we are hoping to avoid. And as I mentioned here at the bottom, I think the tiered arrays that we found, flash, NVMe, and thick spinning disk, 4 or 8 terabytes, they meet the majority of our workloads. And of course, as we think about dedupe and compression, really helps with affordability. Now the magic, or technological magic, or magic through technology, is something we spent a long time working through with NetApp. What are the dedupe and compression rates actually going to look like? Will the tiering pieces of this perform in the way that we expect them to? And so we had to do quite a bit of investment to make sure that we had found and could identify and be able to put together a solution that was going to meet our platform needs as opposed to a singular solution. And so another example, as we think about investing in a broad solution, instead of buying a pinpoint solution for Oracle databases and one for SQL databases and one for file servers and one for print, this was a platform that really could address the nearly all of our needs without having to specialize any one of them and pay both the cost and maybe the complexity to do so. All right, so another area, so we talked a little about technology 101s, picking technology, thinking about technology. I think the second element that's important here is assembling the puzzle in a unique way. We all largely have access to the same puzzle pieces. There isn't really too much that's hidden, and many of our shops aren't writing their own code beyond maybe glue. And so I think it's critical that we all think about how we assemble the pieces of the puzzle that are most important to us. And the first thing I want to talk about is creating a team that allows that to happen. And so, you know, fostering, participating, and supporting ideas. And then the most key part of that is the best idea wins. And oftentimes, I'll admit it's not my idea, which makes this even more difficult to accept as a model, but I do. And this is something that we built into the culture of our teams. We're really looking for the best idea and allowing people to go through common and uncommon approaches to how to tackle it is critical. That the strongest resource I have is not my budget or my technology or my hardware, it's the staff that operate those things. And they oftentimes are the most significant difference between success and failure when we're thinking about how to create something that's agile. Whatever ideas, creativity, uniqueness they can come up with is often what we rely on to be able to turn and leverage one piece of hardware or one approach or a cloud connection or data into something that is unexpected and beneficial for a community. However, I think one thing to point in terms of leadership, which I think is the third part of this, is leaders not only have to share the benefits, which we're really excited about. I love telling my boss when we're doing a great job and saving money and doing better things. But we also have to share the risks. I have to understand and be behind and willing to put on my flak jacket if it goes south, and all the things that when you're building something unique, you're often creating risks, right? What is the old monicum? No one ever gotten fired for buying IBM or buying Microsoft or whatever the newest one might be. So when you stray off the path a little bit and do something unique, you do incur some risks of why did you do it that way. But I think if you're fostering an environment where the best idea wins, when you're quickly going through good and unique approaches and vetting them out, and then leadership sharing the risks and benefits, you have a nice combination for determining what technology might be best. Now, another big caveat on this, we have lots of rules that we pick for what to choose as might be unique, but one of my strongest is if you can't find it on Google, it's probably not a good idea. So don't stray too far off the path. If whatever tool, hardware, language, feature you are thinking of deploying in an enterprise level or campus level, and you can't find it on Google, or I hesitate to say Bing, but I suppose Bing and a few others, then it's probably too far off the path, right? There is an edge for that. And I think there's an important piece as we think about investments and puzzle pieces. There are things that differentiate us from our peers, and there are things that we just need to get done operationally, right? File and print and email. Those are all very important operational aspects, but no one comes into Syracuse thinking, wow, I hope they do email, file, and print well. That is not a differentiator. Research computing is a differentiator. LMS, our learning management systems, are differentiators. Those are places that we may want to stray a little farther off if we think it's going to be a differentiator, or perhaps we really do want to invest in a niche solution because it's a differentiator. And so understanding it from in some sense, from a business perspective, from the leadership all the way down to the individual contributor, what's the most important thing that we're doing here is if this is going to make my Oracle report run in 6 hours instead of 2, so that means it'll be done at 2 a.m. instead of 6 a.m., I'm not sure that we would want to invest any dollars in that. That doesn't seem to be like, it seems to be a great investment in terms of both staff or dollars or time spent. And so I think when we're thinking about this as a category of innovation or creativity or uniqueness, this is an important one that's often mixed. We often go to the vendors and say, help us fix our problems, instead of saying, let's understand what our problems are, and then we'll be able to better express how we're going to help work with our partners to solve them. So this is a good example, again, of something that took a lot of creativity, time, and effort. And so we're moving from our existing platform for backup and DR, which has been very successful over the last 10 years. However, as I mentioned, we're growing, and we're already a 10 petabyte shop, and we're growing about 1.7 terabytes a day, if I remember the number correctly. And so scaling up was becoming increasingly difficult and costly. And so one of the benefits of picking a platform for our storage was that we were able to, across both of our data centers, now take advantage and leverage the ONTAP ecosystem. And I'm not much for commercials, and again, the NetApp folks close their ears, but it's been a pretty successful adventure for us in terms of being able to cross the data center divides. Our data centers are relatively close, so we really they're only about 2 miles, and they're dual fiber connected, and so we treat them as one. But it really has allowed us to move towards using this ecosystem as our primary backup and DR. Now, that I think is itself is a success for many things: shipping less tapes, better compression, dedupe, all important technology pieces. But again, this is a year-long investment of our time to explore the technology. And then I think the most critical piece was there are gaps. There are gaps in the components that we needed to put together. And so we needed to provide the pieces of code, the glue, the puzzle pieces put together in a unique way. You can go and buy NetApp, the FAS units. You can get Snap Center set up and put together. However, the thing that was unique about us is we had some requirements that weren't quite in the feature set or the direction that they were planning, at least for the moment. And so we needed to add the unique, the sauce, if you will, to make that all put together. And so 1 year later, after we started down this journey, maybe it's a year and a half now, we finished the coding and puzzle pieces development and fit them all together. And we're now migrating to this new backup and DR platform. Again, combination technology, combination people, willingness on my part to say, yeah, this is a little unique in the way we're approaching it, but the savings, benefits, capabilities, RTO, RPO is much better in this snapping than it was in our previous one, all worth the risk that we might take doing it. So when we're thinking about agility, it's more than just, do we buy the right hardware or the right cloud apparatus? You have to add in, are we looking at it in the perspective of the staffing, and are we allowing and creating an environment where people can really make and use unique options to differentiate Syracuse, either by cost savings, by feature augmentation, cost avoidance, whatever it might be? Is that an environment we're building within our groups at the storage layer, at the mid-tier in terms of our larger infrastructure groups, and then our IT shops overall? So wrapping it all together, I think some obvious Dilbert almost-esque themes here: unexpected needs, circumstances, and even pandemics come without warning. Well, I think now, after 2020, wildfires, pandemics, I mean, we've checked a lot of unfortunate boxes this year. And so I think we have to recognize that we can't put together a playbook for every possible scenario, right? It's just the scenarios are way too many. Who would have thought a year ago that we would be doing all this virtually, that we'd be talking about masking and social distancing, and that we would have already had such a human tragedy of lives, and we'd all be working remotely. And so I think that what we're really doing when we're thinking about agility is playing out as many possibilities as we can, or building as many possibilities into our infrastructure as we can, open standards, cloud bursting. We have a very, very efficient and powerful cloud burst plan for infrastructure as a service. We have a lot of platforms as a service and software as a service connections. So we're not server huggers or infrastructure huggers. It's really a best tool for the job approach. And so when we think about the unexpected needs or circumstances, I'm mindful that I can't just pull out the playbook and say, oh, pandemic 2020, here's my playbook for that. It really has to be developed on the fly, which means we have to have technology that will adapt, people that will adapt, and leadership that are able to lead through it. And so the combination of technology, creativity, and leadership, I think, is the key component. It's not any one of those things. You can get from good, better, best. You can go from good to better if you have one. But as you add on more components of each one of these three things, you move up that scale from to hopefully the best. And so it really has to be a mix of a system we can support, i.e. design, a system that we can afford, dollars and people, and then a system that meets our needs. And those things oftentimes over the last 4 or 5 or 6 years, when I've met with partners, they want to focus on one of the three or maybe even two of the three, but they're all three of them are definitely linked to one another. And so the first thing that we typically do when we're talking about very cool technology, because vendors do have very cool technologies, we ask them, hey, can we have a straw person quote for this, just to make sure we're not shopping at the wrong store and we can't afford to actually buy it, let alone own it. And so I think when vendors move from that vendor to partner shift, that's building that relationship, so making sure that they know what your shop is. Now, maybe you're Harvard or Yale or one of these other Cornells, I think, is on this list. And maybe your budget, I doubt it, but maybe your budget is extravagant and you're buying gold-plated servers. But I think for the most part, we're all dealing with the realities of these three things being intertwined with one another. And picking partners that understand that is important. Otherwise, you waste a lot of time and effort managing people who don't quite get the importance of buying resources that help you, not just with this one very fast Oracle database, but a broad spectrum of things which allow agility. And then another aspect is, I'm a planner. Life comes fast, budget changes come fast, staffing changes come fast. Being able to have plans, backup plans, and adjustment is an important aspect of it, as not only leaders, but individual contributors. How increase in data flow, shift in priorities at work. We now need to consume 300 terabytes of data. How are we going to do that? Those are all, I think, important pieces that can get lost. We want to build static plans and try to execute them over a 3-year period. I think those days are over for the most part. I think we're building flexible strategies or guidelines or guideposts along the way to what we were hoping the outcome is. And within that, those plans or strategies, we're always looking at plans and then backup plans and then figuring out how we're going to adjust to hit that outcome, which has become the new thing, as opposed to stuck on a specific technology or approach that we love or really cared for. And so I think that's also in terms of leadership, as we bridge a lot of different people on the call. Some folks are looking at this as, wow, is my array performing? Is it doing the things we need? All the way up to C-class, which is thinking about how am I going to put together organization. I think a lot of these concepts bridge across all of those. Individual contributors, the better they understand the outcome that the university or that the IT shop is trying to accomplish, will do a much better job selecting, giving guidance to the best technology choices above them. The last thing I would offer is start now. And I know I touched on this at the beginning, but if you're feeling like your infrastructure isn't particularly agile or is not as agile as you'd like, it's very difficult to start building agility in the middle of a pandemic. But that's kind of what we're called to do. How do we increase agility or think about agility in each one of the individual decisions we're making? So what are you purchasing? Is that the thing you should be purchasing? Is that the type of thing you should be purchasing? What do your staff think about purchasing in that way? Do they understand what the outcome is? All of these things mixed together mean that you need to start early and think longer term than maybe just what the next thing is. That is the piece that I think most successfully has added agility, is we're always thinking a few steps out.